Good afternoon. We're in the midst of a constitutional crisis, and I think called the global sovereign debt issues. I've written to Her Majesty the Queen today, and for my own safety I'm making a video about the content of that letter, because my friend Greg Hallett was disappeared because he made similar gestures trying to expose the illegitimacy only of the monarchy. I'm talking here about the massive frauds that lead to world ownership involving Christianity and all of the false religions, and all wars, yeah, all of them are reputed to end all other wars, and it just keeps rolling on. And the tragedy is that Her Royal Highness and Prince Philip, the murderous person in her bedroom, were sitting in the Albert Hall at the celebration of that Germanic tune. Okay, so on to the email I've sent. The tragedy is that the head of our democracy, David Cameron, who's a decent kind of bloke, as I keep telling you, is no longer contactable by email. This is my open letter to HRH, Queen Elizabeth II, Prime Minister David Cameron, John Lamont MSP, Callum Kerr MP for my region, and he has already acknowledged receipt of that letter. Yeah, I'm being persecuted by the Jedburgh Law Courts and by my wife's divorce solicitor, who's Miss Patricia Tom, who's a Canadian, who used to be the lawyer for the Borders Council, who are persecuting me using the people that are the treasonous former bosses at the Borders Council, which has asset stripped everything that our country used to own. I'm being persecuted by Jedburgh Sheriff Court. We're on the 7th or 8th sheriff, because every time they accuse me of anything, I clear my name, and even the temporal clauses for my divorce now have been removed. They tried to pretend that my backdated payments would be made to 2011 when my wife deserted my bedroom, because our mortgage has been paid off. Lothian and Borders Police, Michael Ancram, the Marquis of Lothian, His Grace Guy Innes-Ker, Duke of Roxburgh, Mrs. Valerie Jane Lees, CC'd by email to over 1,000 global bystanders. Okay, so the mail is, I'm not sure how I get back into the email message that I just sent. Let's see if I can do that by going back in time. Oh yeah, okay, so it's sent to the office at Whitney Conservatives, yeah, and it's sent to a number of Prince Charles's contacts. Yeah, let me show you at high resolution what the actual recipient list is. Yeah, so office at Whitney Conservatives, admin at qvs.org.uk. So these are Prince Charles's interests, including the school under St Giles in London, because all my reports here are about the interlocks between the war crimes, the financial frauds, the economic institutions that run every war for profit, and the religious fraud. Yeah, so Prince Charles's financial advisor runs the girls' school, which is right under St Giles in London, right in the heart of the place that has mysteriously been immune from bombing. Okay, admin, and that one's to the children of Prince Charles who were forced into Australia. Oz Tutoring, yeah, that is Simon Day and his relations that were the jet black people that Princess Diana declared there are too many people in this marriage before they murdered her. Inquiries at Kensington Prep, yeah, so the schools that are run by the Prince are right up there. Yeah, he may have the courage to talk to me. He looks like a relatively decent person, educated at Geelong School with Rupert Murdoch. Inquiry at princessfoundation.org, info at Linden Lodge, that's the sinister German linkage to the Windsor monarchy, Wandsworth School. Yeah, all of them are educating the children in how to steal and kill in our totally globalized tragedy. Yeah, that's my wife's address. Yeah, that's Miss Patricia Tom. Yeah, I don't know whether or not she has received my email yet. I'm in Jedburgh Sheriff Court next week, and I want them quaking in their boots about their treason. They are now complicit in a whole series of crimes that are listed in the letter below. Okay? So, the estates at Flores Castle, because when I write to the factor now, I get blocked all the time, and you know now about the links to the factor, the war dead, yet that were the factors for the Duke of Roxburgh, and the Stormouth Darlin issues that have busted everybody's pension funds out of Lothian Road. And you've got Ancram at Parliament UK, because the Ancrams, the dukes of the Marquesses of Lothian, are blood relations of Longshanks. Okay, I only learned that in the last 2 or 3 days. Okay, everything is right in their faces and they have nowhere to go. They cannot deny it. All of it is documented, and it just takes a simple, ordinary, honest person to tie the strands of evidence together. Which is why I'm being divorced, because I am that outspoken person that is prepared to confront the treason. And my wife works in Intel, and all of that, and all of the asset stripping of the British students is covered in the letter. Okay, so that's estates@florescastle.com. Yeah, and I know Gordon Little, who will be the recipient of that, and I hope that he is loyal enough to our country to pass it on to the Duke. Jedburgh Sheriff and JP Court, jedburgh@scottcourts.gov.uk, John Lamont MSP at scottish.parliament.uk. Inquiries, so they may be in recess, he may not get that. I see him quite a lot in my hometown, and he knows of my intent to send that because of the videos I've made in recent times. This one's a futile one that I send all my emails on political activism to. Nobody ever registers receipt of it. Inquiries at lothianborderspolice.uk. Callum Kerr is my new political representative. Yeah, and unlike the treasonous Michael Moore MP, yet with the Assassination Bureau run by Crawl out of Glasgow, yeah, he has been resigned from every political office. He runs the massive frauds in the P&O empire, and he is in league in that sector with George W. Bush. Okay, callumkerr.mp@parliament.uk. George Lees, and that's sent to me for security reasons, and in a whole host of names that get, because I send it to thousands of people at the same time for our mutual safety, and I've explained that to my wife. Yeah, and it is absolutely amazing that they get away with it for so long. Yeah. Right then, let's see if I can open that again, or we can go forward to the letter. There are no pictures. Okay, it's roughly explaining the treason, yeah, by kings, queens, and political figureheads and religious figureheads for centuries. But I tried to keep it up to date, and only the most relevant treasonous crimes that have occurred in the past 2 or 3 years are listed on this succinct bullet pointed letter that I've just written. Okay, I don't know how I open it again. Let's see if I can. The Word document seems to have closed. So another strategic error by me. Okay. Oh, it's coming up. It was perfectly legible before. Okay, so the Queen is about the only person in our country who you cannot contact by email, but David Cameron has just joined that sector, because my message there is that PM Cameron's office in Whitney, I need you to confirm that this has been forwarded to David Cameron. The letter appended is addressed to HRH Queen Elizabeth II, but it covers treasonous issues that the PM needs to be aware of as a matter of urgency. Okay, so I'm doing everything I can to get the news out, yeah, and Oh, we're going to get the letter to open. I hope it's at the same resolution as that snap preview that I closed already. Okay, I've bullet pointed it because the capacity to capture their attention for any length of time is quite difficult. Okay, right then, let's get it up so we can see everything that I've written. Yeah, that's my Skype address. I've given that to the Queen in the hope that I will not have to invade her bedroom like that guy did in the 1970s to get this message across to her. I doubt that the administrators will have the courage to forward it to her personally. I need to get to her personally. Yeah, she's a puppet for the politicians, yeah, and the moneylenders, like the queens and kings have been for centuries, and I want to keep her safe. She has the capacity for greatness in global history, and I emphasise that in my letter. Right then, so how do I get rid of that bit? No. Okay, I think you can see it. Prof George Lees, that's my address in Kelso, where I live. Callum Kerr has now replaced the disgraced Michael Moore, and John Lamont came second in the election. He's a kind of decent chap. You can see that he wants to communicate, but he knows the dangers of it. And because I know all of his director numbers and all of the scams that Julian Lamont runs, he's a little bit afraid. The issues here, John, are bigger than your career and mine. Yeah, they are of international importance, and the global economy has been scammed out of its competency. Yeah. So the open letter went to all of those people, and I've already read that, so let's get to the content of the letter. Yet there are no pictures this time for the bimbos, but the title, oh, and I've sent the wrong date on it. Yeah, I forgot. I've been drafting the letter a couple of weeks ago, or a few days back, and I forgot to change the date. The date actually today is the 31st of July. 30 days have September, April, June and November. All the rest have 31. Yeah, my memory's getting better. But when I tried to talk to David Cameron's representatives on the phone, yeah, they gave me a line that was just a blind line like all of the others, and it was within the Westminster Buildings exchange. So I got close to a conversation with some of his aides, but they will not let me get intimate with anyone because I know all of the horrible truths. Okay, the British constitutional monarchy, the global sovereign debt crisis, and taking the world for the first time to peace and prosperity. Your Royal Highness, as you may be aware from my previous correspondence, I am a professor of neuroscience and pharmacology, deeply committed to resolving these issues which are beyond the scope of simple and busy people. The issues I am about to raise as a series of bullet points need to be confronted by civilized figureheads, which is why I'm writing to you again. Ours is the only generation in British history which has not been committed to war thousands of miles from home, and I thank PM David Cameron for withdrawing from the war zones created by earlier regimes in Iraq, Afghanistan and Kurdistan. Yet that's a genuine compliment. That man has done the decent thing when democracy requested it, unlike the socialist Tony Blair, yeah, and his colleagues in America, yet that brutalised these places for the motives that are explained below. So I want to join you and inform you on how simple it would be to restore every nation to solvency, and for your reign to be remembered as the pivotal factor in taking the whole world to civilization. None of us can change the events of the past, but our future can be secured from learning from them rather than relentlessly covering up the darkest secrets in world history. So the key issues, the simplest, are at the top. Yeah, the big issues are right at the bottom, and that's the religious fraud. Yeah, totally immoral, totally lethal, and totally ignored by everyone, yeah, through all of human history. All of the journalists that I work with who are working independently will not touch it, with the exception of John Patterson, who's on the email list. The sovereign debt issue, so bullet point 1, the sovereign debt issue is a scam. No balance sheet can feature only debtors, but globally our balance sheet does. Every democracy across the globe has lost the governance of its own central bank to private interests, often linked to fabulously wealthy people, some of which are CEOs at virtual products frauds. That's Cairn, yeah, run by knights of the realm, and all they have is coupons in the Caymans. It is 200 years this year since the Bank of England was stolen following Waterloo, thousands of miles from home, and that's the ABBA song in celebration of the 5 arrows beginning to spread their influence across the whole warmongering world. Third bullet point. Now all the sovereign nations on the globe have lost access to the issuance of money for their people. Yeah, in brackets, that's our public sector pay freeze and the closure of all of the law courts. And we've got, yeah, that's the people, and Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan and the Lebanon, the last to go violently under NATO initiatives. Yeah. This is the EU-led countries that won the Peace Prize just a few years ago, like President Obama, who's in Homeland Security all across the world. Fourth bullet point. The treasonous scams of the recent past to divert the people from the truth that our current government and law enforcement are scams. That is Moira Anderson child murder, Sir Stephen House, Malcolm Rifkind, Iraqi profiteer, interlock to Chilcot, G4S, Aberdeen Asset Management. And Chilcot is the war crimes in Iraq inquest chair, interlocking on the board with our Foreign Secretary in 2002. Arnott Manderson, the Chipping Norton diversions, Trident 3 and Trident 4, nuclear extinction threat run by mercenaries out of Ecclestone Square, London, and now since my exposures to Justice Secretaries in Scotland and Lord Wallace of Tankerness, relocated to nearer the Tower of London, where the ravens still have their wings clipped. Yeah, you need to be a simple historian to understand that story. I don't have time to explain it. Trident 3 and Trident 4, which could have won Scotland their freedom in the referendum, where did we not have a treasonous law enforcement, which is called in Scotland the Crown Office. It is not a coincidence that the referendum was sold yeah, by the current illegitimate monarchs that run the country and run the law courts. Yeah, entirely for profit. And so the treason and the theft and the freedom concept thing can be totally suppressed. Okay, so Trident 3 and 4 have now moved nearer to the Tower, where so many monarchs, clerics and courtiers from less ruthless dynasties and all sectarian Christian denominations have sadly lost their heads or their wives' heads. Yeah, there's the people that were married, there's the treasonous and profiteering papacy, yeah, and the wars that they fought with King Henry, and all of the wives get the heads lopped off. And this one pretends that she's regretful about killing Queen Mary, and Lady Jane Grey is the Protestant to take the fall, because everybody needs to have a culprit, yeah, for everything that they run the world with. There's the others that get beheaded or just divorced. Okay, so there is the new address for the Trident 3 and Trident 4 things that have never appeared in anybody's news since I revealed it to Alex Salmond, Nicola Sturgeon and the same recipients of the email, yeah, before the Scottish referendum, when McCaskill and Salmond were forced into resignation because they are the privy to the selling of their country for profit under orders from ruthless and lethal killers. Trident 3 Limited, company number 04186733. This is the first time that this has been reported to the recipients of that email. Callum Kerr has already agreed that he has received the email, but commits in the response that he's too busy to talk about many things. Yeah, same techniques, that the same constitutional breaches that Michael Moore was guilty of. 1 London Bridge, London, SE1 9BG. Now I could click on that and open the tab. Okay, let's show you who's on it, because this truth has been suppressed ruthlessly by the English government and the Scottish government ever since I revealed that their previous address was in Ecclestone Square, and that is Ecclestone that is linked to the funding of David Cameron's Conservative parties. Yeah, and that may not open. It does not look as if it's going to open very quickly. Let's keep going. If it does, I'll be able to take you there and let you see that there are mercenary army leaders on the list. Yeah, that there are people called Pearson on the list, the massive financial dynasties, and none of that is connected to any government, either in the Glasgow region where the Trident nuclear weapons are, in the submarines, or in the Westminster region near Tower Bridge. Yeah, it is run for profit as a scandal and a money laundering tool, and all of it has been kept a secret since I released it to the SNP, and their local members were really excited, but their leaders, because they're paid to sell their countries, would do nothing about it. That includes the people from the Aberdeen region. I forget what her name was, but she has a deformed lower lip, and as soon as you reveal them as traitors, there is no way that you can communicate with the SNP with more than one person at a time. Okay, next bullet point. Your family's legitimacy since Queen Victoria. Let's see if I can open that. It's companycheck.co.uk, company /041 86733 /Trident3 Limited, directors, secretaries. Okay, take my word for it, go to my website, you can see that the secretaries and directors that are relevant in the mercenary context and in the treason context for the SNP and the Westminster government. Yeah, they are still listed there. Yeah, because they've changed their address for shame, because Ecclestone is intimately linked to the Grand Prix frauds. All of the cover-ups since Ronnie Biggs and Christine Keeler were making fools of themselves as diversions, like the Chipping Norton set now do. Yeah, that's Jeremy Clarkson now, and Nigella Lawson, the daughter of the legendary Thatcherite Chancellor. Yeah. Your family's legitimacy, next bullet point, since Queen Victoria has been questioned. I live in the region where 4 generations of the Dukes of Cumbria and Teviotdale were deeply involved in all of that, and the Georgian Hanoverian regimes leading to Windsor name change in 1917 is in the past and will remain there if you allow me to take a neutral hand as an honest and open advisor to the constitutional monarchy and the government. It will not happen with the elected officers because they're picked by coercion. Yeah, and the spin doctors that Blair had are frankly war criminals, and I've got all of the evidence for that. PM Cameron is deeply implicated in the Chipping Norton set with the Murdochs, who were educated at Geelong School in Australia, like Prince Charles, which takes us into the deployment of intel. Yeah, because the CIA planted Murdoch in America, and the CIA have now rigged everybody's elections, confirmed in the conversation with Jim Fetzer on the massive war crimes jokes, and the fact that that joke is shared every Remembrance Sunday with the people of the world, and it's the royals and Butcher Haig that profit from the Poppy Fund. And the surveillance issues that allow our history to be covered up at great expense. So Intel are now the money launderers. And my wife was interlocked with Kerrs everywhere she went. Yeah, the boss at Otago Polytechnic and all of the initiatives that she had. Yeah, there were cares on the board at Plexus too, but I will not drone on those domestic issues. The reason for my wife's treason is now apparent to large chunks of the free world. Yeah, or those that can access YouTube. Your family lead these sectors as unelected figureheads with no accountability. Yeah, that is the military sectors. Yeah, and our armed forces too. I have published. So Prince Philip, because of the Queen's apathy, took over as the boss at MI6, and he used it and the armies and navies for really dubious motives, which take us into the next bullet point. Your family leads these sectors as unelected figureheads with no accountability, and our armed forces too. I have published all the narcotics scandals that involve the Navy, the RAF and the Dutch Royals, who launder the cocaine in your husband Philip's light tubes. Yeah, that's Philips, the electric company from Holland, and the cocaine is in the glass light tube until they break it open, having picked it up using the Navy in the South Pacific. And our treasonous media cover it all up for most of your reign, as Mountbatten is murdered in the name of the sectarian tool that is Ireland and Islam, despite the fact that the Bible and the Quran was written by the same families and published in Tel Aviv. The war profiteering led by the Flemings, next bullet point, registered with the Dukes of Norfolk in Bond Street. Sir David Steele, who determined the Syrian problems and their funding and defrauded the Scottish democracy with massive PPP scams. The Blunts, Admiral Canaris, the man from Uncle Desmond Morton, and Winston Churchill, yeah, and Morton and Fraser were the employers of the next sheriff in my divorce proceedings next week. Yeah, Beaverbrook and Stalin trained in Tavistock with Hitler. This is the 2012 London Olympics joke. So that's the Flemings and the Bond movies. Yeah, and the joke here is that they're registered in Bond Street with the Dukes of Norfolk, who are the friends of Longshanks for 1,000 years. And that story is covered with another hyperlink. I hope it opens. If not, I'm going to have to open it for you, because it's a scandal that I only discovered at the beginning of last week. And it includes the commoner family that are the Middletons in the elites since Longshanks. Right then. So can you see why I'm writing to the Queen? She's less likely to take me out with a bullet in the head than the people that suppress her family and kill her daughter-in-law. Yeah? But nothing would surprise me now. I may not live long. I'm proud of everything that I've done in the whole of my life. Okay? So, let me read the last bit again. That's Her Royal Highness coming down with Ian Fleming, or the body double called Craig for James Bond. Yeah, he's the modern James Bond. Daniel Craig parachuted into the London Olympics with another character who was the Queen. Yeah. This is the 2012 London Olympics joke at the War Dead, with you, HRH, parodied in the parachute, and all the Anzacs which were culled by Churchill in 8 months. Yeah, I revealed that Mr. Bean was the war correspondent for Gallipoli, and within 6 weeks, yeah, so Mr. Bean plays the organ at the opening ceremony. Yeah, it's a joke about the war dead. Yeah, and within 6 weeks, Australian Governor General Bryce, that's Quentin Bryce, resigned for shame. The links of the current regime, next bullet point, to Longshanks and the Plantagenets, with his legendary successors, the Dukes of Norfolk, bedding and siring children of the Middletons, the Percys, the Balfours, Marquesses of Lothian. That's why I sent the email to Michael Ancram, who's just above the Jeddah Law Courts. Yeah, he knows I'm a good man, and he knows why his wife has pathologies. Yet he's tried to converse with me. He will not have the courage to expose this, because it's physically too dangerous for them. And these are the army leaders that run the armies in pinstripe suits. And he was based in the Aldershot region, where all of our brave warriors go to their deaths and are trained there to be loyal to this system. Okay? The Kers, which is why I sent it to to the Duke of Roxburgh, Guy Innes-Ker, and the Innes name is a joke about the name of Jesus, which is Insus and Ineos in the massive scandals that involve BP. Yeah, and all of the people in the fascist story about the business world in Britain, since Tiny Rowlands was a director. Yeah, and Mrs. Thatcher's husband was on the board at Burma Oil. Yeah, we've got the Montagues and they become the Buccleuchs. The Scots are on the list. That's the Scots of Notting Hill. Do you see the magnitude of the theft project and the wealth divide project? That's the de Mowbrays, King Edward II, Edward IV, Thomas Boleyn, Mary Bertie and Catherine Brockholes. Can you see the Windsor jokes now, and the Badger Cull, the need for the diversions for every fraud that occurs in world history, which turns into a genocide or a religious massacre? The Astons, the Astors, the Levison Gowers, the Fitzalans, the Davidsons, yeah, who were involved in the persecution and beheading of Mary Queen of Scots. Yeah, Mary Bertie, yeah, she's actually a character in the breeding chambers in the dynasties that are below Longshanks. 1,000 years of it, and many other lethal, regal, marital relationships to be found in the four-poster here. Let's see if this one opens. Okay, I've made 2 videos on it very recently, so let's keep going until it opens in our face. It looks as if that one's going to open. Okay, it's a massive, I was completely stunned by it, because the Middletons are alleged by our historians to be prostitutes. Yeah, and they may well be prostitutes, and they may well run chip shops, as was told in the national press before the royal wedding and all of the royal birthing. Okay, but let's keep going until that file opens and gets in the way of this one. The biggest issue is Christianity and all false religions. Okay, so that's a scandal. Yeah, the Longshanks things, and it makes me tempted to use the word gotcha, which Rupert Murdoch used when they were sinking the Argentinian battleships in Mrs. Thatcher's unjustified conflict just so she could win an election. It's very prudent of David Cameron to ring-fence himself from open communication with any freedom fighter anywhere, but he's got a conscience about what he's done, which is why our policies, yeah, in the last year of his previous term in office with the treasonous Nick Clegg, yeah, and all you've got, and Nick Clegg's wife runs the assassination bureau in Brussels, which is the In Bruges film joke. Right then, it's not going to open, but what you've got is Wikipedia, Dukes of Norfolk family tree, and it's still on that tab there. So let's do it that way, just to show you that it actually exists. Norfolk Arundels, yeah, Longshanks at the top of the tree, and all the way down you have world figures and massive power brokers. Okay, the Dukes of Norfolk. So I will not tell you about that. Look it up for yourself. Everybody that's in the Blue Peter sector, yeah, all the trivial TV programs are launched to cover the massive crimes of our past, and it's totally destructive for our future, because everybody has a conscience about what their grandparents did, and if they were just to turn their heads to what our future could be like, then we could have a beautiful, well-funded and peaceful civilization globally, and the birth rate would come plummeting down, because you don't need loads of surviving relatives to fund Granny and Grandpa, because they've led an evil life. Okay, there's Edward I, yeah,
Marguerite of France, and let's take you down until we find somebody reasonably controversial, and then I'll take you back to my bullet points, because this is just one of their sins. Yeah, and the current incumbents of the dukedom of Norfolk, I made a video on last night, and they now make their money out of shareholdings in the false religion. So they make shareholdings funds from the cathedral, which is massive, on the south coast, right next to Hastings, where Christianity was launched. Yeah, and it goes right up through the country and all over the sectarian world as the major cause of death all around the globe in all of human history. That's Christianity and the love your neighbour concept. I have not found there's the links to Manchester United and the Nevilles, and let's find, because I forgot to put the man who was the head of Oxford University Press. He's in this listing too, and that's the Maxwell family. Robert Maxwell was a mercenary Christian army leader in the 30 Years' War, yeah, from the west coast of Scotland, like the Cumbrian king, yeah, who was the butcher at the battle for the Jacobites, yeah, where all of the Catholics were slaughtered by the German king, yeah, and then because of the treason in the court, he gets defamed for the rest of his life, but has a massive salary. That's the Duke of Cumberland, the butcher of Cumberland, who was the Marquis of Berkhamsted. Okay, yeah, well, I'm telling you repeated stories now, so look up that family tree, you will be stunned. Right then, so, shit, what have I done now? So we've done that. That's the Tower of London and the relocation of the former Ecclestone Square TRIDENT nuclear extinction threat. All of our country and all of the law enforcement globally has ignored that. Yeah, because I mentioned it to Jim Fetzer in the video I made on the war crimes jokes. He was not stunned by that. Yeah, it's typical of the munitions profiteering, but when I told him about the war crimes jokes and the massive religious fraud that underpins that, yeah, because Poppaea, the poppy concept, was in the Roman court with Nero, who was killed by the Piso family who falsified the Bible. Okay, so we've talked about the Chipping Norton set and the implications of David Cameron being in league with the Murdochs and the global propaganda, and we've talked about Prince Philip being the head of Intel, the head of the Navy, and Princess Anne is head of the armed forces too. All of their family get to play those roles, and when it comes to the terror that takes us to war, they are involved in the Twin Towers. That's another bullet point. Okay, so the war profiteering led by the Flemings. Oh no, we've got to the Longshanks links. Yeah, and the Levison Gowers are the inquest chairs. They're on that family tree, and they are linked to the Duchess of Sutherland, who sent the colonists to the colonies. And you've got the Scots of Notting Hill and all of the links to the massive Balfour dynasty and the Montagues that have vast tracts of land all over Britain. And the Percys, yeah, are Perseus in the Roman court, yeah, and they're my employers, and I earn from them £32 a day to let their elite clients shoot the pheasants on their vast tracts of Scottish land. But they were less powerful than the current kings and queens, because some of them got topped in the battles, yeah, for supremacy, and they were on the side of Lady Jane Grey. Yeah, that's the Protestant side of the fence. They now are aligned to the false news and the false Hollywood sector that wins the Oscars for making the Harry Potter movies in their castle at Alnwick, which is immune from narcotics regulations, like the whole of the royal activities in all of that narcotics sector that I just told you about. Okay, so the biggest issue is Christianity and all false religions launched by the Piso family out of the Villa Papyri. I need to keep all of the interlocking factors brief and snappy. Okay, so the biggest issue is Christianity and false religions launched by the Piso family out of the Villa Papyri in Naples when Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD. The Piso's government ruling elites and the Rothschilds now deploy vast resources to cover this, the world's biggest secret. I know your family, this is to the Queen, are deeply implicated, but I can find you the safe route out and make the current regimes the most popular in world history. That is the Christian oath that Longshanks, Charles and Diana and your parents, in inverted commas, because her parent is Winston Churchill by artificial insemination. Yeah? Yeah? So, Charles and Diana and your parents swore to love their global neighbours. Okay? The cover-ups involve the entire free press run by Murdoch and the ruling elites out of Washington, IMF, the World Bank, the White House, where every president has been a Freemason, like the traitors in Kensington Palace in your bloodline. Yeah, the Windsor name change for panic in 1917, right in the middle of the biggest ever massacre. Cluny in France, where Christianity built its biggest abbey before the Vatican. Now the Cross Keys icon is the Scottish saltire flag. So the Cluny icon is the Cross Keys, and that is the St Andrew's flag for the non-existent St Andrew, part of the biblical fraud. Yeah, and that Salmond used, that's the Scottish loyalty concept that Salmond used to sell Scotland's freedom to your constitutional monarchy, and the issuance of money from the privately owned model in the Bank of England, Cheapside, yeah, that's the Bank of England in central London, or the Isle of Man model which Salmond was advocating, yeah, where the Nazi internment camp was when Tiny Rowlands was being groomed as a global mafia leader. That's Tiny Rowlands, who owned Lonro and Lonmin and all of those massive scams. That's the ownership of BP and the ownership of all of the oil wealth all around the world. Yeah, so he's a global mafia leader like the Warner brothers from Treblinka. That news absolutely stunned me. The Warner brothers' hometown was the first place where the genocide occurred in the Holocaust in World War II. All world leaders become cartoon characters from that point on, and that was the first leader, that was the first massacre in the Holocaust in World War II in Krasnoselsk, a tiny little village, and it was massacred. The Jews were massacred there because they would recognise that the Warner brothers, who changed their name from Woznolaka, yeah, the world ownership jokes. Yeah, so now we're getting down to the really touchy issues, yeah, which nobody will talk to me about since John Patterson got a little bit nervous about how long he would live. Calpurnius Arius Piso, he's the man that they sing about on the golf course. You're the man! Yeah, the most influential fraudster in world history. Okay? And the K can be replaced with a C in Greek or Italian or Latin or Hebrew, and all of it leads to the massive jokes that they share only with the people that can read and write for centuries. Okay? So the initials are KP or CP, and that is Kenyan Products, KP Nuts, Supermarket Terror, Pistorius Trial, Kevin Peterson with Cowdrey. He's on the Longshanks family tree. Yeah, and the Lords is the cricket ground joke. Yeah, about the Lord being the Lord in the sky. It's really quite sinister, which is why they need a big family like Henry VIII had, and none of them live long enough to take his place, and the gods entirely dictate that. Yeah, Aryan master race myths throughout history. Remember, the name of the man is Calpurnius Arius Piso, okay? And several generations share the name and they rotate them around, okay? And so, Katy Perry, P.I. wins all the Oscars since National Velvet, Life of Pi, Warhorse, and the horse joke is the GG joke, which we've just explained, the laughing at the war dead by the Governor Generals, and Piso is the hippos in Greek. Yeah, and the hippos swim in Reporting Scotland's inner circle, yeah, involving Sally Magnuson, Alistair Moffat, the rector at St Andrews University, and all of the false newsmen like Jim Nockey, who's a recipient of the email. CP is also on the shoulders of Dad's army in World War II profiteering jokes. Who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Hitler? Hitler is the friend trained in Britain and brought up in Liverpool, which is highlighted further down. Arius Piso are first and last letters are Alpha and Omega, and that is what is on the Paschal candle in the Easter celebration for the Catholic Church about the non-existent Messiah. And all of the Easter jokes are vicious. That's the rolling stones away from the tomb, and that was used on the album cover for the Rolling Stones' Paint It Black album, which is the Vietnamese War, thousands of miles from Homeland Security in America. And we were led there by Nixon because they want to sequester the narcotics wealth from all of the Golden Triangle, which is why Mrs. Thatcher's husband was on the board of Burma Oil, and Aung San Suu Kyi's dad was a tank commander in the British regime in Burma. See narcotics motives below, and the loaves and fishes jokes, and all of the human penis goldfish jokes about the siring of the children in the European monarchies are absolutely vicious. And that's the history of the Roman Empire and the story about the penis in the hot dog in America. Christmas camels, of course, are the three ships for Columbus and Magellan sailing by in the missions with the icon for Jesus. I saw three ships come sailing by on the non-existent Christ Mass, which is why they call it Xmas. Do you get it? And the for Jesus story in that is that El Nino, which is now Bill Clinton's global warming scam, is the tiny figurine of the baby Jesus that was traded for pearls and all of the wealth that they can get out of the South Pacific. That's a conch shell, yeah, and it's from a rare species called an abalone in the South Pacific. Almost everything has been fished out and rendered extinct by these greedy bastards globally, okay? If the Queen talks to me civilly, I will not use the word bastard. I will not even use the word batard, because all of those things are in the past, and I want her to take a caring attitude about what happens to all of the children in the future generations. They are being totally brutalised and robbed blind, which comes in the final bullet point. Okay, so that's the El Nino global warming scam, is the Jesus Christ scam in stealing the pearls and the gold from the South Pacific citizens on the beachhead. Okay, next bullet point, sectarian violence and wars for 1,000 years since Longshanks visited the Holy Lands and pre-planned the Irish Troubles to divide and conquer, involving Ian Paisley, which is the Piso, P-I joke again, and it's the pie in Scotland, and that is the female vagina joke, yeah, which makes it ever so ruthless, but if you understand it, it's ever so funny, like sex on a Friday, yeah, and that is the fish on a Friday, because the penis is the fish and the pie is the female vagina. Do you get it? So the Paisley Abbey is another Piso joke, like Princess Fergie's 9/11 little red doll terror issues and the Piso toe-sucking jokes that allowed her to cover up the killing of 4,000 innocent people in something that was used to demonise bin Laden, who was educated and welcomed in Cambridge every time he wanted to visit. Okay, so that's the toe-sucking jokes and Britain's imperialist wars. 6,000 miles from London, that is Khartoum at the head of the Nile, which is Piso in translation from, I think it's Hebrew. Yeah, and all of it is a massive joke, because the Nile in the early days of the Christianity fraud was called the Pishon, yeah, to take the pish. Yeah, that's Sally Magnuson, the presenter of Songs of Praise's favourite topic. Yeah, she talks about the utility of urine, and she takes the piss all of the time, and her mum has dementia and she does not understand that. And it ran close, the Nile, to the Garden of Eden. That is the BP plant in Aden, which we went to war for in the 1960s, and it is now the Yemen joke for the Beatles, the Yemen. Yeah, like the Yellow Submarine from the River Spree joke, with Eva Braun wearing her little royal blue dress in the Nazi diaspora through the Canary Islands, helped along by the popes and the archbishops with the canaries on their shoulder. All of these crimes against the people are driven by ruthless, lethal, murderous and genocidal peer pressure, and compared to molecular neuroscience, it is really easy to understand. I want to help you lead the world to freedom, and until you decline my offer, I will remain your loyal servant, but will keep telling the truth about global governance. Yeah, it's total chaos by design for the super elites who are so wealthy that they cannot spend all of their wealth in their lifetime or several generations, which is now entirely chaotic and really dangerous in an extinction context. Next bullet point. I am frustrated by the incapacity to contact you electronically on the web, but my phone calls are free, and I persistently request to contact David Cameron on Skype, which your courtiers might introduce you to so we can talk and both of us can stay safe. I prompted your unique meeting with the cabinet when Ken Clarke was loosed without portfolio, and you panicked and engineered the Tottenham riots and the UN protest killings. Yeah, as a sideshow from all of the news that I was releasing all those years back. I think that was 2011, when I was a really naive researcher. Now there's very little more to learn about how the world has been committed to all of these behaviour patterns, because it leads to world ownership and a massive wealth divide project, yeah, that is totally needless. Yeah, if we were to issue the money to every democracy on the globe, we could have a beautiful civilized society without the need to keep telling lies to cover up our past. I was born on the Balfours farm, and my destiny is to bust it all open, and you, Your Highness, are an icon for the English-speaking world, and I would appreciate your constructive input so David Cameron can continue with his conciliatory policy making, and everybody really quickly can have a life, a salary and a decent pension. I know you and your family have a finely tuned sense of humour, since they watched Eric and Ernie Wise, and that is the Ernestine and Albertine Bertie jokes, which were stammered out to the world. And there is a place for this in civilization, but only when the armies come home and the politicians are not picked by coercion by the moneylenders that the fictitious Jesus, in inverted commas, warned us about. Okay, so I'm tapping their sense of humour. I am in divorce proceedings like King Henry VIII, but mine is not nearly as dangerous to the female gender as his was. He is also on the Longshanks family tree, yeah, with only 2 of the wives, yeah, for reputational reasons, and I can help you free the world really quickly. I have a Scottish accent and a gift for explaining things to all classes in society, which is why this has been CC'd to my feudal landlord, the Duke of Roxburgh guy Innes-Ker, who also has his babies in the Lindell wing at Imperialist College London, where my wife trained with Miss Manningham Buller and Stella Remington in your Intel. That is ITU Imperial College, where I used to work. Yeah, and I met him outside the birthing chamber where the queens have their babies. Yeah, and I used to work trying to save the lives of people like Erie Neve, and I now have a lot of stories to tell. Erie Neve was Mrs. Thatcher's lover, and he was murdered by the regime, if the story is true, and he had both legs blown off in the drive out of the Parliament building car park, and he was still alive with both legs off when they got him to Imperial College London Hospital, where I used to work, right opposite the birthing chambers for the Duke of Roxburgh and the Queen and Commoner Kate, who's not as common as they make out. Thank you to the folk from the Arundel region for releasing that information and your proudness of your bloodline connected to Edward Longshanks and the Holy Lands and everything that is a bloody crime zone ever since we went to the Holy Lands in the name of the false Christianity. And I now have a lot of stories to tell. You can get me a global audience and I can make the whole world happy, and you will be popular in the annals of history, and I can have my family back. So, Your Royal Highness, I understand all the jokes of the world leaders that include the Tannenbaum, oh Christmas tree, which is the red socialist flag song. Yeah, it's the fascist song for Hitler, it's the fascist song for the monarchy all over Europe, and it's the fascist song for Tony Robinson, who leads the Labour Party. And its fundraising efforts, yeah, as an aid to Tony Blair, the mass murderer. Yeah, so that's the socialist flag for Tony Blair and his fundraiser-in-chief, Tony Robinson, from the Time team. War dead jokers all, and operating out of, as the historians, Christ's College, Cambridge, for a laugh. That is the university town of Cambridge, which, like Oxford, Heidelberg and Göttingen, which means no God, near Hanover, like your bloodline, were immune from bombing, like Hearts and Beds, where de Gaulle lived safely through World War II in Berkhamsted. I am soon to be rendered homeless and penniless by my disloyal wife and her treason team, led by the Canadian solicitor, like our central banking boss. So please respond quickly. I have made a video on this correspondence, which I will share with the world today before I commit it to Vince Cable's post office. That is Vince Cable at the DTI, who runs the profiteering scam to steal £50,000 from every English student for an honours degree that David Cameron and I got for free. That is the student loan scam, which is run by the Rothschild Bank, closely related to the funding for all wars and all sides, which are the ownership central banks, which is the job now done. The ownership of the central banks, and the job is done. The loot is in the hands of Sotheby's, who are run by Longshanks' surviving relatives, the Dukes of Norfolk, and you should see how they make the money from nothing, by issuing shares in their massive cathedral and in the St Barnabas Society. That is the religious fraud, again out of Arundel, and it becomes the empire upon which the sun god never gets upset by. Yeah, because humans are now the gods, and the Virgin Mary is now the Mother of God in the heavens. As it was written. Okay. Okay, so, are you getting the picture? The clouds are gathering, as I wrote that, like they did in the biblical floods, and before we needed Baroness Blackstone's Channel Tunnel scams with the Anglo-French Chamber of Commerce. So please reply quickly, but I would prefer to talk one-on-one, like that guy who invaded your bedroom. Things turned out okay in that incident, unlike the Rothschilds' interventions in Victoria's persecuted love life in rape for profit. Yeah, that is their interventions into the reigning monarch's bedroom to sire all of the illegitimate children that now are coming back to haunt you all. That leads to both great wars. So as God's representative in England, I know how busy you must be, but I can only pray for a speedy and constructive reply. Yours loyally, Professor George Lees. Okay? You now know what I'm trying to do. You now know how I'm trying to help the monarchy, who have been persecuted for all of that time, because none of them live their lives safely. They are all under the heel of the moneylenders that Jesus warned us about, even although Jesus never lived. Okay, I'm going to stop there now and get this uploading, because it's very important for my safety that the news gets out to a significant number of people, and I'm going to send that email to more and more people globally. It is shocking that the world can be run this way. We could only be a year from global civilization, everybody living safely and prosperously. Yet if they were only to do the decent thing and to stop spending the world's resources on the cover-ups of their grandparents' massive sins and genocides. The Pope is not supposed to have grandchildren, but nothing would surprise me. Bye bye.